Hey, Chau. Thanks for joining us today on our Advice from Industry playlist and for sharing your perspective on school and work and the transition and then balance, things like this. So just to start off, could you tell us kind of in a nutshell your work experience from your education, your internships, and what you're doing now, and if there were different jobs along the way?
Yeah, so I went to Cal Poly, as some of you already know. And during my last quarter at Cal Poly, I got an internship as a lighting company, and it's all by luck because like the representative of the company came to the school and say, "Hey, we're looking for interns. So if you guys are interested, let me know," and those kind of stuff. So that was my first internship, and I was actually really worried before that point because I was approaching my last quarter at Cal Poly and I didn't have any internship experience yet. So that was a lot of, it was a big burden that was lifted off my shoulder. And then came the graduation was another big worry. Like, would I be able to get a job, or would they like me enough to convert me into a full-time position? So for my story, they apparently they like me enough to want to hire me full-time couple of months after my graduation. So that was my first job at the lighting company. My responsibilities back then was basically to design a lighting fixture, an outdoor lighting fixture, and do some testing. So the testing was included like thermal, vibration, and photometry, like a special for lighting industry because you need to measure how much light output each of your design is, and use that as something to market for the product. So that was my day in day out task at Hubble Lighting, and I also did a lot of drawing and production support. And because of those tasks and experience, it landed me the job at VO. Because when I was hired on a VO means Virgin Orbit. As a company, as an aerospace startup. At the time when I joined them, it was still a startup, but it belonged to the Virgin Group. So yeah, well, back to my story. Because of those experience, I got hired at Virgin Orbit. And when I first came, and my main responsibility was to test a electromechanical actuator. And then later on, after that, they had me do some drawing work and also help with production support. So as of today, I am still with Virgin Orbit, and as my second job so far. My day-to-day tasks are to release drawings to support production. I also do a lot of analysis on the part of the assembly that I own. And it's not only a one-time analysis kind of thing, but every time a new loads come out, and I have to redo the analysis, rewrite margin, and restart everything. And new loads coming out because every launch we fly a different trajectory, and then we have different payload and different ways, and so that's why it's different every time. Almost every 3 or 4 launch, we have different loads that come out. Oh, and I forgot to mention about Virgin Orbit. So it's a launch company that launch small satellites into space, and because of that nature of work, we launch it into different orbit. That's why every time we launch depends on what the customer want to get to. We fly the rocket at a different trajectory. Yep, so that's pretty much about me.
Great. So how long have you been at Virgin Orbit now?
It's been a little bit more than 4 years now.
Wow. Very good.
I'm one of the people who stayed there the longest. And many people move on usually after like 3 years or so.
So what kind of analysis are you getting to do to perform?
Structural analysis mostly. Yeah.
Great. So tell me then, do you feel that your education prepared you for this job? And if so, in what ways, yes or no, and in what ways?
So I think my education at Cal Poly in a way prepared for me for my job, but not so much that I would hope it would. For example, I would say if I have to say it quantitatively, then I would say it prepared for me 20% of what I can do at work. It gave me the fundamental knowledge to understand the problem, to understand all the laws and reactions and stuff. But then it doesn't. It kind of didn't train me on how to apply into the real problem. Or maybe at least for me, because I came from mechanical engineering background, I didn't really have aerospace experience, and now I work at the aerospace industry where it's very, very technical, and a lot of I would consider aerospace being the most technical engineering field out there.
Nice. So what kind of structural analysis are you doing? Is these just axial stresses, bending stresses, plastic bending? Are you doing any fatigue? Are you doing thermal problems?
I mostly do static. So I will be given, so there will be, there are a couple of groups in at version orbit, and the lowest input that I usually get is from a group that they call flight sciences. So in that group, they basically run all the analysis at the whole rocket level. And so, they will have like section load at each of the assembly. And when it gets delivered to me, then I know for my assembly, I know how much load it will go into my structures, like, section load, bending moment, and all the axial force. And then I have and when it delivered to me, then I have my own model, which is a lot finer mesh than what they have for the whole rocket. And I take those loads that they gave me to use as my input, and I basically look at the strains if it comes to composite, and I look at the major principal strains and minor principal strain, and I evaluate it against the open hole compression allowable of the composite, or open hole tension allowable. If it's a metal part, then I usually write margin for the von Mises stress. Yeah.
Are you doing any stability analysis?
No.
Not really?
No.
And so you're doing a lot of finite element analysis, or a little bit?
A lot of finite element analysis.
What platform are you using?
I'm using feedmap. When I got hired at VO like a couple of years ago, I initially started off with Advancing. So it's also similar to feedmap, and it's also owned by Siemens. But the interface is a lot more user intuitive than feedmap. Feedmap is like the oldest nastran software out there that many of us know of or know how to use. But I think personally, their menu, or their clicks on very user intuitive, and plus it takes a lot of click to get to the task that I want.
Yeah. So you're using feedmap with nastran then. Do you ever go into the nastran bulk data file when you're to tweak your numbers, or do you always do it all from the feedmap interface?
Yeah, sometimes I go into the bulk data to tweak my number, especially when it comes to thermal loads. Yeah.
Now, have you gotten to do any programming?
So I tried once last week, but what I was using was a Python code. So I was given loads from the flight science group, and then let's say if they are flying, if they do loads for one trajectory, they will give me like loads from different payloads, and it could be like 4 or 5 sets of data. And each set of data, they gave me the aero pressure map of one single component in my assembly. So I kind of have to concatenate between the different tabs in the spreadsheet into one tab, and then I import it into my model. And that's a lot of repetitive work, copy and paste. I was spending like 30 minutes on it, and then I was like, okay, I don't think it's gonna work. And I am, exposing myself to making mistake by doing this. Like, what if I copy the wrong tab? What if I pull up the wrong spreadsheet? And basically, so then at that point, I decide, okay, I need to teach myself how to write a code that will automatically go into the Excel spreadsheet, pull up the data, copy it into a new spreadsheet for me, put everything into one tab, and I will, only import that Excel data into my feedmap. And I figure, it has been my struggle for a really long time, because I figure if I spending my time trying to write that code for myself, it probably take me the same time as me manually copying and pasting each of the Excel. But then I decide to do the coding. I decide to go with the coding approach because I figure I don't want to make mistake. And because it's the very first step, and for my analysis, one single mistake can carry a really long way. And
True.
yeah, and then if I automate the process, then at least I can avoid making mistake. So that's when that was my first time trying to code something into doing a repetitive task to avoid errors. Other than that, I have also API code from my coworkers. They already developed many of the API codes to do what we need to do at version orbit. So I just use their codes, and sometimes I try to make like a small modification to the code, but I have never write one from scratch for feedmap at least.
So this program that you wrote though is in Python?
Yeah.
Nice. Now, have you done prior programming in like MATLAB or Visual Basic or anything?
I did a little bit in Visual Basics.
Before? Okay.
Yeah.
One thing you might find is that, first of all, if you use that program again, you're going to be much faster. But also you'll find as you program things like that are repetitive, your programming skill will get better and better. You get faster and faster. So then the trade-off comes back better and better each time you do it, even if it's a different problem.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, when being an engineer is my biggest hurdle that I have to go over, because I still remember like back then in school, I didn't like any of the programming class. Maybe I had a bad teacher, or maybe I'm just, not good for it or not good with it. But I really, really procrastinate whenever it comes to programming. But I'm glad that finally I made that call and, start to like trying to educate myself to do something that is actually productive and rewarding in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, that's true. What we end up being great at often is a coupling of our abilities and the education we got or the professors we had, where if you get a natural gifted person can become great without a good professor, and a person that's less gifted can become great with a good professor. But when you get somebody that's both gifted and a good professor, that's often where it fires our excitement and builds that skill much quicker and stronger.
Yeah. And then also encouragements also, help a lot for a student. At my work, I still remember my experience. Like the first year that I worked there, they have something that called a Gallup survey. And one of basically, asking employees questions about like not about technical related or anything, but it's just like the work culture and random questions to kind of gauge engagement between employee and the company, and then also between employees with each other. One of the questions that I found really weird to me at that time, it's very uncommon. One of the questions was, has your boss appreciate or give you praise for the last 7 days?
Oh,
and
wow.
And it struck me surprised. And also another thing, but we'll go over it later. So it struck me very, very surprised, because in my mind at that time I was told that, okay, I am getting paid to do my job, so if I'm doing my job, it should not matter if my boss, recognize my work or not. But then that was me, being young in my career and stuff. And much later, a couple of years past, I realized that recognition and acknowledgement means a lot to an employee.
Yeah, and especially to you. But many employees, I've seen that when you get recognized, you come alive.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are that way. Engineers, we tend to be recluses, and a lot of times we can perform pretty well even if nobody gives a rip or notices anything. However, when we just a little bit of positive feedback, constructive feedback can be fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and initially, like I mentioned initially, I thought it was funny, it was silly. Like, why would they ask such a silly question? But then when I pay attention to my coworkers and then also with my own experience, I feel like it actually helped a lot to to know from your boss that they actually appreciate the work that I put in and also appreciate my effort and all the stuff that I have done for the company. So that kind of like something that is very important that I wasn't taught when I was in school. It's just like I think those skills that I pick up when I actually start working in the industry is also very important other than the technical skills.
Sure. So let's say that you dialed the clock back for better or for worse and had to restart school, like you dialed yourself back all those years. Would you do anything differently? If so, what? And what would you do then?
If I, get to come back to my past and talk to myself, I would hope that I made more friends in school and be more, open, be more outgoing when I was in college, because those were my shortcomings for my college year. So, coming from coming from a third world country, I was always like very purpose driven, meaning when I go to school I want to get good grade and finish it as fast as I can so that I can get a job. It's all milestone based, so it's just like always about getting to your end goal, but none of us really care about the process of how we get there or enjoy the ride. That's what you would say. We only care, okay, we want to go get to our goal and that's it. That's all we care. So that was one of my shortcomings for my college years, and I hope that if I have a chance to revert it, I would wish that I made more friends, be more outgoing, be more social, because like those are the things that much later in my career I realized it actually means a lot rather than being having good grades and graduate earlier on time.
Sure. So if you could change something about your education, some way that it was done or something, what would you change? Is there anything you can think of that would have made your education better?
Are we talking about engineering in particular or my
Any
education?
part.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm pretty happy with being an engineer. I think it fits me well, but also there's like many different aspects of engineering. I think some of us will be good with doing analysis day in day out, and then some of us really enjoy working on drawings, crossing the T and dotting the I's. So I feel like there are many aspects in engineering that I can find myself fit right in.
Sure.
There's some of us who want to do the big thing like R&D and new exciting projects. Then there's some of us just want to do the maintenance work, like the upkeeping work. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with my choice back then, and yeah, I don't think there's anything in on top of my mind I would like to change about my education.
Nice. So what would you say are the keys to success in undergraduate studies?
The key to success in do homework, always be prepared, coming into class knowing what you learned in the previous class and what you will learn in this class. I think that is the key, so that you don't, you always you don't get lost during lecture. And then don't procrastinate.
So do you feel like you did enough homework in statics, or should there have been more or less?
I think it was a little bit more than usual. but I'm one of the oddball who enjoy doing homework, so I can't speak for everyone. But for me, it works out great, because for me, like for myself, homework is when I actually learn the material. But don't get mad at me. I have to admit that during your lecture, I don't really listen. I listen, but not so much of it will actually get into my head. But the time when I learn is actually the homework, when I have to like trying to understand it myself. And there was time where I didn't listen to lectures, so then I had to read the book, trying to like understand the problem and figure out how to solve it. And one last thing, take advantage of the office hours. You pay for it, and it's like basically one-on-one tutoring session. So take advantage of it as much as you can.
Good point. Yeah. So what would you say are the keys to success in industry?
The key to success in, I think, a few things. First one will be content with what you're doing. Like don't settle. Like let's say you need a job. Even like when you need a job and you feel like you need to settle because you have no job right now and you need to settle for an offer, do so with an open mind, or at least you are well aware that this is what you settle for. So don't be, don't expect too much out of it, basically, because that's what your choice to begin with. And if you are one of those lucky people who get the dream job that you always wanted, then be responsible and be content with what you are doing for at work. So I think perspective is very important when it comes to being successful in the industry, because I have seen people, their common trait is to basically what I call a moving target, right? Let's say you new grad, your dream job will be getting into Boeing, for example, one of those like big aerospace company. But shortly after that, I would say give it 2 years, now you become unhappy at your job because whatever reason it is, they don't pay you enough, or you get paid less than your friends, or you don't get to do exciting stuff, and so on and so forth. But at that point, then I noticed that people usually become unhappy, and they just like conveniently forgot about the fact that 2 years ago it was their dream job. Yeah. True. So I think just be well aware of that and be content and not having to move and goalpost. I think those are pretty, yeah. But I mean, having a move and goalpost can also be good, most of the case but you have to be realistic though. Like you have to be aware that whatever goal you set for yourself, it has to be realistic. Yeah. Otherwise you just keep, chasing the unicorn, I would say.
Is a balance, right? Contentment without complacency is really the key. If you're never happy with where you're at, oh my gosh, then your whole life you're miserable no matter what you accomplish.
Yeah.
And also we end up, if we focus too much on the next big promotion, we don't end up giving back to the people that have invested in us, right? We have a responsibility to benefit these companies that are paying us while we're there, not just to get to our next promotion, which sometimes can be troubling.
Yeah, because like I noticed that the common trait from those people is that when they get what they want, they will be happy, but it doesn't last so long.
True.
Yeah, it's just last time maybe a year or two, and then now it become the normal. Like they normalize themselves too quick into it. And so whenever, I mean, to be honest, it happens to me too, but whenever it happens, I always remind myself, what I wanted 2 years ago. I basically keep reminding myself about like my past and also what I actually want for the rest of my life. What is my ultimate end goal, and stick with it. Because I think that if you don't have, if you don't sketch out an ultimate end goal, then all your goals are basically, things that you set to get validation from others. It's like competing with the Jones.
It's true. That's a great
You're always trying to be like better than the guy next door. But at the end of the day, I think what makes you happy is ultimately the most important thing.
Sure. Let me ask you another kind of question. So as a female in education, did you feel like you had a disadvantage, an advantage, or was there did you feel you were treated differently in a negative or positive way?
So when I was in school, it was a mix of, disadvantage and advantage. Like I would talk about the advantage first. So I got treated more gently by, many of the professors because I'm a girl and I would call the rare species and mechanical engineer. So that, I got treated differently than other male classmates from some professors. And the disadvantage are that, it was a little bit harder for me to blend in or to like mingling with people because they are guys and then they all talk about cars and, like guy subject and I kind of find hard to fit into those. So and that was also one of the reason I didn't have many friends in school because many of my classmates are guys.
Good
and
point.
and then we pretty much didn't have common topics to talk about or like common interest. And when I started as with my first job, I also noticed the same thing that happened in the industry as well. I feel like female, I mean at least for me, there's only like for female engineers, there's only two possible scenarios. Like the people who feel like they're so timid like me, and they feel like they are undermined by their male co-workers because in the meeting, whoever spoke the loudest. That's how it's just the engineer meetings I usually are, and I was always like be the soft-spoken one. So my voice sometimes don't get heard. And
you think that's because you're a female or because you tend to be a quiet person?
I think it's because I'm a quiet person. Yeah, but I have to say it's also stemmed from me being a female. Like your gender, your background, your ethnicity, it all like some part of how you are as a person today.
Sure.
So so that was one of the challenge that I have to I have to face in the real industry. Oh, and then I haven't talked about the other scenario. I also have female co-workers who like didn't want to conform to the gender norms, so they like try really really hard to like exert themselves. And when a guy do that, it's different than when a girl do that. Yeah, so those two are like the scenarios that I have seen a lot for female workers in the engineering industry.
Interesting. So you also mentioned you came from a third world country. As somebody from that, with that change, did you feel like that put you at an advantage or a disadvantage in your education and or career, and how so?
I think it's actually both. Everything always have the good and the bad side. So for me, the good side is that I feel like because I am coming from, because of my background, I feel like I am more well-grounded. Like I know what actually out there rather than like if someone grow up here and go to school here, they say all their exposure is about the American system. So they haven't seen, the rest of the world and know that America is actually the best. So in their mind, they only exposed to America so far, and they have so many complaints yet. If they see the rest of the world, then they'll realize, how lucky we are to be in America.
Wow.
So that's the good thing about, having like different background from my classmates. The bad thing is about my English. So it took me a really long time trying to speak English properly, and I'm still, learning every day, trying to pronounce it better, trying to enrich my vocabulary. And yeah, so that's the disadvantage. Oh, there's another advantage too. Like where I came from, the education there is a lot harder.
Is it in
So
Vietnam
yeah,
harder? In what ways is
yeah.
it harder?
Hmm?
In what ways?
The tests are harder, and
Nice.
as I would say it's a little bit corruptive. So in order for you to get like good education, you have to have money or connections.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think, and in America, I think it's pretty much fair game for everyone. There's opportunities for everyone, and there's always a path to like progress or to move up in life if you work hard enough, or if you're driven enough. But yeah, in Vietnam, it's a little bit different than what's here. So I have always told people that if I am still in Vietnam now, I think I would not get an engineering degree simply for the fact that engineering school there is a lot harder, and then also I wouldn't have the fun to like to go through college. I wouldn't have the money to attend college and pay for all the tuition fee.
Would have been a loss for engineering.
Mm,
You're a great student. I'm sure you're doing a great job out there at Virgin Orbit.
mm. Well, I think a lot of us, if we put in, the effort and and our mind into doing something, a lot of us can, excel in what we want to do.
So, kind of a side note, one thing I recall is your meticulous, beautiful work in your homework and tests. So perfectly done. What is that your natural giftedness, or was there something that helped develop that in you, or both? Could you comment on that?
Well, I would say it's because of my education in Vietnam too. When I came here, I noticed that you don't have the calligraphy class. I still remember in Vietnam, first lesson to everything, they made me sit there and, write in the same letter and over again until I perfected it. And it's days after days after days, there's so many of that like writing exercise that I put myself through. So because of that, I had like good hand, like nice handwriting, and also because of my background, I think I became organized. As I feel like those skills are needed to be survived in a
Mm,
third world country.
nice. And it sure fits well with engineering too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So, is there anything else you would like to share with undergraduate students?
I think we pretty much cover everything today.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah. One last thing, Cal Poly is in my favorite school. I learned a lot at Cal Poly, and I think it was a well balanced program between like lab work and also like technical classes.
hmm,
Yeah. Although I hated all the labs that I had at Cal Poly
did
simply
you?
because I'm not a very hands-on person. Like I'm a lot more on the technical side or more on the theory side of it. I really did not like all the hands-on work that I was put through at Cal Poly. But I'm saying that I hated it, but it's a necessary evil.
Mm,
Yeah, I think this gave Cal Poly student much more knowledge about the real engineering world.
very good. Well, hey, thank you so much, Chau, for your perspective. That was great. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Right.
I hope that I am a little bit helpful sharing my experience.
Yep, that was, I'm sure folks will benefit from your perspective, and hopefully it helps inspire them to become greater and to move onward.
Yeah, and hopefully it encourages more female engineers because we need more of those.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
Something very ironic. I feel like engineers are a lot meant for girls in a way that most of us girls are meticulous and they're well organized and they're well thought out, and so those character traits they fit really well with engineers, but there aren't many of us girls in the engineering field. Because I feel like when people think about engineering, they think about doing big stuff, innovation, making big changes. But to be honest, I think engineering have to have there will be people who innovate and create, but then those people usually they don't like the tedious work, and that is when the tedious people come and then to bring the project back to life into like a real product.
Right. I'd actually rather have a much higher percentage of folks that don't get bored doing repetitive things, because a lot of we do is semi-repetitive. So if I have some driven people that can do the repetitive work and enjoy that and do a good job with it, really only room for maybe 5 to 10% who are great innovators and get bored with the repetitive, right? Otherwise, these guys are going to run off.
Yeah, because I think those two subsets, they don't really, interfere with each other. Like you don't find someone who really, really like R&D work, yet still, enjoy the upkeeping work. So it's hard to find someone who like both. So what we're gonna have to compromise is to hire a mix of engineers, someone who like to work on a project and get it, make it happen, and someone else who actually bring it to the finish line.
Sure.
Because the people who started usually they don't care about drawing release or production support at the end. They just want to work on something exciting. Like as soon as they get it, as soon as they get the big thing figured out, they want to move on to the next project.
It's true.
But if you don't have the people who actually bring it to the finish line, then we never have new products. So we don't really make a wonderful idea into real life.
Agreed. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Chau. That was awesome.
All right. Have a nice day.
You too. Have a great day, kiddo.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.